You know what's hilarious about everybody right now on Twitter and social media crying about the Woman King movie? Crying about, oh my God, the Dahomey Kingdom, they were selling slaves. But these same people, they'll glorify Shaka Zulu. They'll tell you, oh, Mansa Musa, the richest man in the world. They'll tell you, oh, the Haitian Revolution, Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Okay, but Jean-Jacques Dessalines, he murdered over 10,000 mulattoes during the 1799 War of Knives. Between the 1840s and the 1870s, there were many battles and wars between Haitians and Dominicans on the island of Hispaniola. Shaka Zulu was going around conquering territory, swallowing kingdoms up, turning them into tributary states, and making them pledge allegiance to the Zulu. Sunny Ali, king of the Songhai Empire, the largest West African kingdom in history, was going around making people convert to Islam by the sword. I can go on and on, but the main talking point that I see from Twitter, especially for some reason, it's a lot of people with American flags in their bio that got a lot to say, which is funny because I think about 500,000 Dahomey citizens were human trafficked into North America. So I would bet that there's a decent amount of Dahomey lineage within North America. Despite that, American flag Twitter is going crazy, got their panties in a bunch about the Dahomey Kingdom. Now, how would the Dahomey Kingdom end up in North America in those numbers, end up in the Caribbean by the millions, if they were the quote-unquote slave traders, as the people on Twitter are going crazy right now talking about boycott the Woman King movie? Now, me, the reason why I'm not going to watch the Woman King movie is because it was not written and produced and distributed by black people. I just think that if it's a bunch of white women and white men, writing it and funding it and distributing it, I just think it's not going to be A1. I don't think it's going to be a great product, but that's not because I think that it should be boycotted or the story shouldn't be told. Because if the story of the Dahomey shouldn't be told, then there is no story in African history that should be told, period. There is no story. We should not talk about the Zulu. We should not talk about the Mandinka. We should not talk about the Mende. We should not talk about the Yoruba. We shouldn't talk about anybody, because what people have to understand is, in pre-colonial Africa, the name of the game was cultural supremacy. Because Africa was the richest landmass on earth during that time, there was no reason to be fighting other races. Number one, there are no other races around, and all the other races are broke. So when the center of trade, when the center of commerce is West Africa, yes, you are going to have different African nations, different African kingdoms vying for supremacy, vying for dominance in their region. Okay, it's not a matter of, oh, it's their own people, they're selling their own people. How would they sell their own people if they're selling their enemies? Their enemies who they've had wars for decades and centuries. How did they automatically become their own people later down the line, centuries later in the history books? Oh, they were selling their own people. How did they become their own people? So when the Haitians and the Dominicans were going to war for 30 years, that was their own people. So the Haitians were fighting their own people, because that's what these people say. They say we should boycott the Woman King movie because the Dahomey Kingdom was selling their own people. But then when you actually go into history books, you see that the Dahomey Kingdom was going to war with various nations. But how did they become their own people later down the line? So you see, they play with history, they play with the word games. Why? Because these stories are being told from a European perspective. So now automatically all African nations are their own people. Even if they've been enemies for centuries, it's their own people. You see, these people don't think. And also because they're so far removed from that mentality of really being a warrior, really getting on the battlefield and really trying to conquer for yours. They've been so used to marching and tweeting and doing a bunch of peaceful protesting that they're so far removed from even the thought of conquest, from even the thought of taking up arms for anything, to the point where now they're saying we should boycott the Woman King movie because the Dahomey Kingdom allegedly now quote unquote sold their ancestors, even though they don't even know if they trace their lineage back to the Dahomey Kingdom in Benin. I don't know if they done their ancestry or not, but I did, and I do. I trace my ancestry back to Benin, back to the Dahomey Kingdom. Now, how, if the Dahomey Kingdom was allegedly selling slaves, how did me, as a descendant of the slave trade, end up in the West? How did that happen? Because the Dahomey Kingdom, they got sold into slavery by the millions, which is why they took up arms and began going hard against their enemies. But because in the present day, black people are just so far removed from even the idea of taking up arms against your enemies and getting revenge by the means of violence, they can't even compute the logic of an ancient black African nation doing the same, because they're so far removed from it. If they were in the same situation, they would have marched, they would have tweeted, they would have peacefully protested, they would have begged, they would have got on their knees, they would have, did a sit-in, they would have done some nonsense that didn't have to involve breaking a sweat or shedding some blood. So at the end of the day, me personally, the Dahomey Kingdom was the only reason I'm even alive right now, because the Dahomey was the dominant ethnic group in the Haitian Revolution. The Dahomey military science was the reason why the Haitian Revolution was successful. General Jean-Jacques Dessalines was raised under a Dahomey woman. He learned everything he knew about the battlefield from a Dahomey woman. So at the end of the day, the queen mother of Haiti is a Dahomey woman by the name of Adabayatoya. So if the Dahomey led the only successful slave revolt in history, how are they also these murderous slave traders that people claim them to be? Because people don't really know history, bro. They learn it from the European perspective. A lot of them are just doing some Google research now. You know what I mean? They go to Google, they go to Wikipedia, they read a few paragraphs, and now they know the history, right? But they never sat under no elders. They never sat under no lectures. They never really traveled to these places and talked to the people on the ground. So at the end of the day, man, I'm not going to watch it for other reasons, right? Because this is not a black funded, black created, black written, black produced project. And I think that that's the only way it'll do it justice. Because instead of the Dahomey being seen as the ones that fought against the French army, that storyline is not what it's about. The storyline given to us in this movie, I heard, is that the Dahomey is going against the Oyo Empire, which is the kingdom that was enslaving them for centuries, and then they rose to a position of power and began seeking revenge upon them. So maybe it's some people who trace their ancestry back to the Oyo that got personal ancestral beef with the Dahomey, but for some reason I don't think these people did their ancestry and even know what part of Africa they came from. I just think they're triggered and just trying to be fake outraged about something, you know what I mean? Particularly among the American flag Twitter. It seems like it's the FBA crowd going hard, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, these dudes claim they're not even African anyway, so I don't even know how their ancestors got sold. They don't claim Africa. They don't even appreciate Africa. So these dudes are just online fake outraging, fake crying. You know what I mean? Me, I don't really go to the movies anyway, so I probably wasn't gonna see it. But like I said, if it was black produced, black owned, black funded, I would have supported it. But at the end of the day, you know, we gotta tell our own stories, man. We gotta tell our own stories. And our ancestors weren't perfect. So if you're looking for some perfection, you're not going to find that. You know, you're not going to find that. Because at the end of the day, then throw away ancient Egypt. Throw away all them ancient kingdoms y'all love to venerate. Mali, ancient Egypt, the Zulu, everything. Because at the end of the day, all of these cultures, all of these kingdoms, all of these nations were vying for supremacy within their region. They were trying to be the dominant power within their region. It was not the era of Pan-Africanism because everybody on the continent was black and everybody was trying to be the richest and the most powerful nation state on the continent. At the end of the day, by any means, all right? It was about culture. It was not about race. And I can understand that. But because we are so clouded by race and because we are so far removed from the idea of taking up arms, you know, I'm Haitian, I'm not, but most of y'all are very far removed. Most of y'all have been, you know, praying to Jesus for, you know, centuries and generations now. So y'all are very far removed from the idea of taking up arms for anything. So I understand you guys are sensitive. You know, you see a group of black people taking up arms and, you know, slashing and slaughtering. So some of y'all are getting triggered. But to be honest, a lot of y'all with the American flag in y'all bio, I don't think the Dahomey sold your ancestors into slavery because I think they majority sold their enemies to Brazil. So I don't think you're Brazilian. So, and I don't see any Brazilians, you know, crying and moaning and, oh my God, the Dahomey sold me. You know, I don't think that's how it went, bro. I don't think that's how it went. I don't think the Dahomey were selling slaves to the British. I think they were leaked in with the Portuguese. You know what I mean? So y'all always gonna find something to cry about. You know, y'all soft like the backside of an infant. I understand, you know. But the one thing I don't like is when people say the Dahomey sold their own people. They didn't sell their own people, man. That's like saying Haitians and Dominicans were going to war with their own people. We not the same people. That's not my people. You dig what I'm saying? So it's the same thing in terms of pre-colonial Africa. Just because the guy next door to me is black, that does not mean he's my own people. I'm Dahomey. He's, you know, he's whatever he is. So you guys really got to, you know, sit down somewhere and stop crying. You know what I mean? Stop crying, bro. I really got to stop crying. And if that's the worldview you got, then throw every African kingdom in the trash. Throw every African empire in the trash. Because at the end of the day, the name of the game was about being the most dominant nation in your region. Whether you were in Southern Africa, Western Africa, Eastern Africa, Northern Africa, you were trying to be the big chief. You were trying to be the big kid on the block. You were trying to be the man with the most money and the most guns and the most power. That's what it was. Just like over in Europe, all those many wars between the French and the British and the Germans and the Russians, man, it went on for centuries and centuries, bro. We know all them crazy wars that happened. We sat in social studies class. We sat in history class. They taught us about all of them, bro. The French and the British were going at it for God knows how long. But nobody says the French and the British were, you know, going to war with their own people. Do you know that during the Haitian Revolution, the general of the French army was arrested and sent to a British prison? Does anybody say, oh, the British kidnapped and human trafficked and, you know, imprisoned their own people? No, the British and the French, that's not the same people, bro. And at the end of the day, I already dropped a video a few weeks ago going more in depth on this. The Dahomey Kingdom, they came from the underdog position. They were getting bullied. they were getting punked all over the west side of Africa until they decided to grab their nuts, get their money up, get their muscle up, get their power up, and seek revenge upon their enemies. Now, if y'all gonna twist the story and rewrite history and then take the Dahomey getting revenge upon their enemies and say that they were selling their own people. Now, I don't know how the enemies of Dahomey became their own people. I don't know how y'all made that happen. But because nobody respects African history enough, the way they respect European history, the way they make the distinctions between the French and the British and the Americans and everybody else and the Russians, you know, the African kingdoms, they don't get that same respect. It's just, we just all African. We just all one people on the continent. Even though we had our own nations and cultures, we just all one big nation state. But, you know, I understand. Y'all don't study history. You know, you guys are Google scholars. You guys are Wikipedia scholars. You guys go on Wikipedia. You guys read a few paragraphs. And now you know everything about the topic and the subject. But it is what it is, man. The reason I'm not going to see the movie is because it's white owned, white funded, and has white distribution. Now, if that was different, I would see it. Because I know that the quality of the film would be, you know, exceptional. But I know that it's going to be some BS up in the film just because, like I said, also, it's white owned, white funded, has white distribution. So it is what it is, man. Hopefully in the future we get our money up and we can tell our own stories, you know, but I don't know how we're going to be able to tell our own stories when we have all these sensitive dudes on the internet. Like, if we make a movie on the Haitian Revolution and then we make a scene about how General Toussaint had his own nephew assassinated because he didn't follow certain orders that Toussaint gave him. If we make a movie on the Haitian Revolution and then we talk about how the Haitians went into DR and then even assaulted other blacks that did not want to pledge allegiance to the Haitian Revolutionary Army. If we go make a movie on Shaka Zulu, are these dudes on the internet going to start crying when they see Shaka Zulu putting everybody to the sword, black men to the sword? Are y'all going to start crying? Because Shaka Zulu, for the most part, he went to war against other black men. I hope y'all know that. Y'all love bigging up Shaka Zulu, but y'all don't know that he went to war against other black men for the most part. It was his nephew and those successors after him that went to war against the British. For the most part, Shaka Zulu's major battles were against other black kings. So are y'all going to throw Shaka Zulu in the trash too? Because Shaka Zulu was, quote unquote, slaughtering your ancestors? Now y'all going to claim y'all from South Africa too? Man, y'all is insane, bro. Y'all gotta stop, man. Y'all gotta stop, you know, because in y'all mind, for y'all to be happy, what y'all would have wanted was the Dahomey to continue to be dominated and continue to be punked and continue to be taxed by other neighboring kingdoms and for them to eventually be wiped out because they never actually took action against their enemies. That's what would have made you happy because, oh, that would have been the moral thing to do. Turn the other cheek. You get beat up, you turn the other cheek and you let them smack you again on the other side. You know, you wanted them to follow the white Jesus doctrine like you've been taught to follow. But listen, this was pre-colonial Africa before white Jesus came, you know, when black people actually knew who they were. So, you know, they weren't like you. You know what I mean? They weren't scared of nobody and nothing, including white people. So y'all can't say the same because most of y'all don't have an ethnic history of fighting against white people like these pre-colonial African kingdoms. All right. Besides the Haitians, you know, not too many of y'all in the West really got a history of, you know, putting foot to ass when it came to the Europeans. So y'all can't even relate to none of that. Y'all can't relate to putting foot to ass to anybody for real. So y'all really got to just relax, calm down. I'm not going to watch the movie, but the reason I'm not going to watch the movie is different from the reason y'all not going to watch the movie. You know, I'm not going to watch the movie not because I'm soft and I'm sensitive about, you know, historical timelines and how things went down in the historical account. All right. The reason I'm not going to watch the movie is economic. The reason y'all not going to watch the movie is because y'all trying to post up some fake sense of morality. All right. Nothing is moral in the world, okay? The reason you live in the West, you have all these comfortable amenities. The reason why you on this laptop right now, the reason why you got this cell phone is because there's, you know, children in Africa in child slavery, you know, bringing you the luxuries and amenities for a cheap price to the West, okay? At the end of the day, so unless you're going to give up the luxuries of the first world, don't talk to me about no morality. Don't talk to me about none of that nonsense that you're trying to push on Twitter, on your iPhone made from coltan. You got African children damn near dying so you can have this iPhone and go on Twitter and talk about, I'm not going to watch the Woman King movie because of slavery. Man, be quiet, bro. Ain't nobody taking you serious. Ain't nobody taking none of y'all serious. Especially not with the American flag in y'all bio. The flag that represents colonization, Western civilization, and imperialism. But then y'all gonna talk to me about morality. Man, y'all gotta get out of my face. It's your boy Neferkari Desaline back in the building. Yes, indeed. And I'm gone. Peace. And also the irony of American flag Twitter being the most vocal in calling for the boycott of the Woman King movie because of the alleged atrocities that took place. You know, these are the same people that'll talk about the U.S. Marines and the U.S. military as, you know, these people served our country. They protected our country. Oh, we love our country. But then at the same time, they'll never talk about the atrocities committed by their own armed forces. Just the other day, we read the articles that were written in the 1920s about the U.S. occupation of Haiti. We talked about how U.S. Marines were going into the towns and cities and hunting Haitians with machine guns, gunning women and children and Haitian men down in the street, whether they were armed or not. Underage girls being assaulted and impregnated. We actually read an article about that from 100 years ago, but they'll tell you that, oh, the U.S. Marines, you know, we got to honor and respect the U.S. Army and the Navy and the armed forces. They protect our borders. But at the end of the day, you want to go and demonize some Africans that lived 400 years ago, but then you want to big up your service to the U.S. I served my country. I'm a veteran, combat veteran. I was in Afghanistan. Bro, y'all are some clowns, bro. Y'all are really some clowns. And it's like, you know, I sat in the same classrooms as y'all, the same Western curriculum, but I did independent research. I had parents that were actually intelligent and sat me down and gave me their own perspective on things, the African perspective on things, the black perspective on things. And when they sent me out into the world, they only sent me to school to get credentials. They knew that Western education was not the real deal. They knew you had to get your independent education from home. So a lot of y'all, I see that y'all don't have parents that were up on game. A lot of y'all, the only information you do got came from a European source because of the way you speak about history, right? You give honor and respect and deference to the Europeans' history. You know, you don't ever lump him together and say he did anything to his own people. Everything is separate. Everything is delineated. Everything is separated. But when it's the black man, oh, he just did everything to his own people, even if he's not even related or even part of that same clan or tribe. Y'all are some clowns, man. But I'm out.
Reincarnated, I'm back in original fashion. I left on a horse and came back in that ass, and I left with abundance and came back to famine. We used to be pyramids, now we be rapping. Look how the mighty have fallen. Used to be running, now we be walking. When you be cooning, that's when they applauded. Selling your soul, your sons and your daughter. Gotta come up in this shit, they stuck in the mix. Really, my heart it be breaking. That's why I'm stacking that paper and handle my business. Pass it down in generation. Talking about money and power and building a nation. That's a deadly combination. Never be watching the TV, they pushing agendas, falsifying information. No, they got malice intentions. Step in the room and I'm feeling the tension. Enemy watching me blocking my vision. Pay for the check cause I need my redemption. Building my kingdom, I need it protected. Ready for war like a young money Congo. Never decided the team is the motto. Up in the crib and I'm whipping up waffles. Up in the crib and I'm smoking gelato. I'm chilling, I'm taking my pain and make it ambition. I'm blessed by the gods, but I ain't religious. I came for the power, they came for the bitch. They making no hourly wage, I got business. This shit is an art and they could never be taught. Selling my soul, I can never be bought. Play with my money, I see you ain't caught. Run to the check and I do it for sport. Babylon falling, I go to the source. Packing my luggage and go overseas. Shorty be with me and she so elite. Shorty be chocolate, I'm calling her Hershey. Secret intelligence probably gon' murk me. Don't fuck with brands cause nigga I'm Haitian. Say the wrong shit and you're smacking their faces.